Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel once again, and in this tutorial I'll be showing you some basic modeling in Blender. Now let's proceed, but first thing we'll do, I will show you how to navigate around your Blender interface, how to scale, how to move, and how to rotate an object. So to move your 3D windows is very simple. You hold shift and middle mouse button in your mouse so you can move your 3D windows sideways, upwards, and downwards. If you hold Control and middle mouse button, you can zoom in and out your 3D windows, and you can use only your middle scroll button to orbit around your 3D windows. So we have our manipulation tools here. First of all, this is our select tool, this is our cursor, and this is our move tool. So I can move my cube on the y-axis. This green line denotes the y-axis. I can also move on the x-axis. This red line denotes the x-axis, and this y line and arrow denotes the z-axis. Same thing for scaling. The shortcut key to move an object is G on your keyboard. Shortcut key to scale is S to scale, to rotate, arrow to rotate. And now let's go straight to modeling. First thing we'll model a burger first, and then next we'll model a simple microphone. Now I'll show you how to split your 3D windows. So you come to this place here, and once this arrow is pointing sideways, you can right click on it and say split vertical, and you see a line. You can bring that line to this point here, and now we have our window split into two. So I can shift this or drag this to that point, and I can also come here and change this window setup, and I can change it to image editor. And what I will do next, I'll go back to where I saved my reference photo and my project file, and I'm going to select my reference photo that I want to model, and I'm going to bring it into my Blender and drop here, and I have something looking like this. So I can select this cube here and click delete on my keyboard to delete that. So before modeling any object, first thing you should understand, it is the flow of that object. So as you can see, the base of this burger looks like a cylinder, and also this top kind of looking like a sphere, and this other side looking like a plane. So now let's go straight to the point. Shift A on your keyboard to add an object. Shift A to add an object. So you can add a mesh, and let's say cylinder. So we'll scale this cylinder on the z-axis, x and z, to scale on the z-axis. So we have something like this now. So we can click tab on our keyboard for edit mode, and we can also bevel these edges, and I can say 3 for face selection on my keyboard. 3 for faces. So we have vertices. If you click 1 on your keyboard, it's for vector selection. If you click 2 on your keyboard, it's for edge selection. So you can also select from this point to this for vectors, edge, and this for face selection. So I can select this face and say Ctrl B on my keyboard to bevel that a little bit, and select this face also and say Ctrl B to bevel that face. And I can also add loop cut to this segment here. So to add the loop cut is Ctrl arrow on your keyboard. So you can scroll your mouse upwards to add multiple loop cuts, or scroll your mouse downwards to reduce the amount of loop cuts. So let's just leave it at 3 loop cuts here, and this is okay. So what we'll do now, we will say we'll go to our modifiers panel, which is this place, our modifiers properties. We'll click on that, and let's say add a modifier. Let's add a subdivision surface modifier. So this enables our flower here to be very smooth. So I can right click on this and say shade smooth. So now I have something looking like this. Now for these vegetables, it's very simple. We'll do shift A again to add an object. Let's go to mesh, and let's bring in a cylinder again this time around. You can say X on your keyboard and Z to scale on the Z axis, and I can now push this guy upwards. I'll say tab on my keyboard for edit mode, and I will say 1 on my keyboard for front view, orthographic view. I will say Alt Z on my keyboard for wireframe mode. And if I click 1 on my keyboard, or I can come to this place and select vertices, and I'm going to Windows drag on all these vertices here and click delete on my keyboard, and the delete menu comes up, and I can now say delete vertices alone. So if I do Alt Z back again, I can now see my viewport object clearly. So now I will come back to my face selection and select this face, and I will say I to insert a face. To insert a face is I, the shortcut key is I. You can insert this face like this and say I to insert and I to insert. So now I will say I'll come to my vector selection also. I will select one vector, skip one vector, select one vector, skip one vector, and I'm going to do that round, select one, skip one. So this is basic modeling. So I can select one, skip one, select one, and skip one, select one. So we can decide to select and skip. So now we've selected all. I can come to my move tool here and push all these vertices upwards, and I can say S to scale them inwards. I can also scale inwards again. So I can now do Ctrl arrow to add a loop cut here, just to tighten this up. And I'll say, and I'll come to my add modifier panels again, and I'm going to add what we call solidify modifier to this mesh here. And so this gives us some thickness. I can increase the amount of thickness also to 0.04. Can make it 0.05. It's going to be okay. So I'll click tab on my keyboard and say apply to apply this modifier, and I'll say tab again for my edit mode, and I'll say Ctrl arrow to add just one loop cut here. But I can still also go back and add the subdivision surface modifier just to see how it looks like, just to make it smooth. So now it's looking kind of rough, so I'm going to cage this so I can see it properly, and I will say tab again, and I will right click and say shade smooth. So I can still add some details to this. I can increase the render viewport to 2 to enable it looking very smooth. So I can also say tab again and Ctrl arrow to add just one loop cut around the edges there, and say tab, and I have something looking like vegetable. So I can say 1 for my front view on my keyboard, my notepad keyboard. I can say S and Z to scale on the Z axis, and I can also say S to just push this outwards, and like this. So I think this is okay now. I can also select this and say Shift D to duplicate it, and bring it upwards. So to duplicate an item is just simple, Shift D to duplicate. I'll scale this and push downwards, and push this upwards, and push this downwards also. This is okay now. So it's just looking like this, and so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to do Shift A and bring in a plane. I'm going to push this plane upwards. I'm going to say S to scale a little bit, and I'll say tab for my edit mode and Ctrl arrow to add just 3 loop cuts, and I will say Ctrl arrow again to add just 3 loop cuts here, and I will say I'm still also in my vector selection. I can hold Shift to select multiple vectors. So I'll select this one, hold Shift, select this, hold Shift, select this, and hold Shift and select this, and I'll push this guy downwards, looking like this. I will also select this and this and this. Select this also round and just bring a little bit downwards. So I can also select this also, these vertices here, Just push them a little bit downwards like this. Now go to my add modifier and add the solidify modifier once again. I'm going to make it minus 0.05. Can make it minus 0.06 and say tab and apply that modifier. Now go to my add modifier again and add what we call subdivision surface modifier to make it smoother. I'm going to cage this. I'm going to right click and say shade smooth. I'll click on tab again and I'll say control arrow to add just one loop cut by the corner here. So I have something looking like I can also add more loop cuts to increase the details, but I don't think I need it. So just leave it simple. Click tab again. So now I can also keep adding details. So I'll select this and say shift D to duplicate. I'll duplicate this guy and I'll say S and Z to scale on the Z axis. So I have something looking like this and I can now push this downwards and I can say S to scale for the tomatoes. I think it's okay like this now. I can say S and Z, give it some little bit thickness and push upwards. So now I'm going to create this top here. It's very simple. Shift A and I can go to mesh again and I'm bringing a cylinder and I'm going to say S and Z to scale that cylinder upwards. I'm going to come to this point and say S again to scale like this. I think this is okay. So now I can say tab for my edit mode and come to my face selection here and push this downwards. And now I'm going to bevel this face, Ctrl B to bevel their face. So bring it down, 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 and we can add some loop cuts. No, first before I bevel, I'm going to make this up, take it a little bit upwards, and say Ctrl B to bevel. And let's bring it down to this point. I think this is okay already. So I can now push this down, take it up a little bit. I can say select that face down there and say Ctrl B to bevel that also. And reduce the number of loop cuts and let's just push this guy upwards. You can also scale it if you wish, but I don't think there's any point to scale. You can say tab and let's add a subdivision surface modifier to it and let's right click and say shade smooth also. You have something looking like this for our burger now. You can say 1 on your keyboard for the front view and I can now scale this a little bit bigger, just covering the tomatoes. And this is just simple and basic burger. You can say my front view again and say S to scale this guy and push upwards. So it's going to look like this. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to say select this and say tab, and I can come to my proportional editing here and click on this face here and push this guy upwards. So I can also come to my vector selection first and hold Alt to select all these vertices here and Shift so you can select all that vertices. So if you scroll your mouse upwards, you can increase the level of your proportional editing also and decrease it. So we just leave it this way, not too big. This is okay. And so now we'll create these sprinkles here, these seeds. They are very simple. So I will bring my cursor to the top of this burger here. So you hold shift and right click on top of this burger here and say shift A. Let's go to mesh and bring in the plane on top there. I will say S to scale that plane. I'm going to scale it a little bit again. S. I will say tab for edit mode. You can push it upwards a little bit. And what we'll do again, we'll say control arrow to add three loop cuts here, and Control arrow to add just three loop cuts, and I'll click 7 on my keyboard for my top view. And I can now select all these faces here and just off my proportional editing first. Select these three vertices and push. Select this one and push. So always look your reference before you model something so you don't make some mistakes. So you can push this guy like this, and so you can always just play around this stuff. So you can just push this way, and so we can rotate this also, and say arrow to rotate, looking like this. Arrow to make this one a little straight, and select those vectors and say arrow in your keyboard to rotate that. So you can also still adjust them also. Just use your vertices to shape them looking like this. I don't want to waste much time, just keeping it simple. I think this is okay now. So you can now say A on my keyboard to select all, and say E to extrude these vertices upwards, and make it very flat. And I can say Control arrow to add one loop cut there, and say A again to select all, and S to scale. So let's just make it kind of bigger, S to scale. So we'll just spread it around, and we'll go to our add modifier and add a subdivision surface modifier. Click tab and right click and say shade smooth. So now we have our seed on top of our burger, and we can say select this and say X and Z to scale to give it a little bit depth, and we can push it downwards, touching on top of this burger. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to duplicate this seed. So let me rotate this first. Yes, okay, like so. I'm going to duplicate this seed around this burger, but I'm going to use my snap tool also to do that. So I can click. I'll come to this place that I have snap here. Highlight it. It says snap during transformation. So I'm going to click on it to activate it. Click on this arrow downwards. Go to face and come to project individual elements. So if I select this and I say Shift D to duplicate, it just snaps on top of this burger top here. So I can now rotate this. I can select and say click arrow twice to rotate. But I think this is floating, so I can just push this down first. So just select this and snap. Toggle on your snap and then say Shift D to duplicate, Shift D to duplicate, Shift D to duplicate, Shift D to duplicate, Shift D to duplicate. And come here and say Shift D to duplicate, also Shift D to duplicate. Just need few of them to just be on top, not too many. I think this is okay now. If you've done that, you will have something looking like this. So just try to just place the seeds on different parts of the burger. And now what we'll do now, we'll just go straight to texturing. But before we do that, let's bring a plane into our scene. So now let's bring our cursor back to world, say Shift S on our keyboard and say cursor to world origin. And we'll do Shift A again and let's bring a plane and let's say S to scale the plane, and let's scale it a little bit bigger. S to scale and let's say 1 on our keyboard, our front view, photographic view, and let's select all these and let's just push them upwards. So now our burger is on top of this plane. We have something looking like this, and let's activate our camera. So you click 0 on your notepad keyboard, that's for camera, or you come to this place and click that. So now we have our camera placed now like this, and we can also scale this a little bit wider again, S to scale, and click camera view. So we can also come to, so you can select this camera also and come to this object data properties, and let's increase the focal length of our camera. So now we can select it also and say G on our keyboard to grab, G and Z to move, or we can also say N on our keyboard. Or let's first of all, let's off our snap tool. Let's select the camera again and say G, and let's move it upwards to this point. You can also rotate, you can say N also and come to view, and let's activate lock camera to view. So this can help us also position our burger well also to looking like this. So we can also select this guy like this and say N, and let's unlock that. So we can also push, also scale this more again, S to scale, and just scale it to this point, and this is okay now for us. So what we want to do now, we'll just go straight to shading, and we can click here for our shading. Now we are in our shading mode. We can click on our camera back again, and so we're going to just add some few properties into, so we can also come here also and say split vertical again, and let's split to this point, say okay. We can push this, we can push this guy to this point, and let's come here and let's say layout for that. So now we're just trying to just edit this, and let's say image editor back again, and we can come to our image here, or we can come to here and say let's view this. So now we can bring back our image here so that you can see our item properly. So first of all, to add shadings to your object, you select the object you want to add shading. You can come here and say new, and so now a node comes up down here, and we have base color. You can click on this, take your color picker, select this, very simple. Select the next object there and say new, click on this color here, select your color picker and click on that, so you can zoom in and see. So we can add what we call, if we reduce the roughness, so adding shininess to our object. If we reduce the roughness, our burger gets shiny, and we can also try and tweak the color also to look like our reference photo. So we can also reduce the roughness a little bit, and let's just increase the strength. You can also select this and say new base color, and let's pick this and let's make this yellow more, and let's reduce the roughness also. So it's very simple. Now we can come here also and say new and go to base color, select picker tool, and let's pick this also, and let's move this guy up to this point. So you can just play around with your tools, try to move things, tweak things, and see how things work. Select this also and say new, and let's make this green. Or we can reduce the roughness also. We can reduce the strength. We can select this also and say new, and let's select our picker tool and let's pick that, and let's see how it goes. You can bring this to this point also. You can also select this also, and you can come here and let's copy this material. You can select this and paste this material on top of this other material. So now we can decide to make this also a little bit darker and looking like a meat. This is okay now, and we have shade smooth, and we can make this 3, and now we have this, so we can select this and let's make this a little bit ash, not looking white. So now we have something like this now, so I can go back to my layout and come here where we'll have viewport shading and activate that. You can also select this and come to my overlay here and go to geometry and deactivate my wireframe. So now I'll just do simple lighting. So now I can select this um, place I splitted. Bring your mouse cursor to this place, and when the arrow is pointing um, opposite each other, you right click on it and say join areas. So it shows you if you want to join this to this or this to this, but I'm joining this to this, so it's going to come back to normal. So now what I want to do now, I want to um, set up my lighting. So I can come here now and bring this guy here and say 1 on my keyboard for my front view. I say 7 for my top view. I'm going to bring this guy to this point. Now I'll say Shift D to duplicate. So I'm setting a 3-point light. So these are my key lights. And I'll select this and say Shift D to duplicate that. So I'll move this light. So this will be my backlight. So what I will do now, I'll bring this one a little bit backwards. So I'll reduce the power to 200. And I'll make this a little bit yellow. And I'll make it 500 watts. And I'll leave this one at 1000 here. But I will just increase the radius so that I can have soft shadows. So if I come to my render, so this is what I'm having, and as you can see, I can come here also and say S to scale. Don't think I want it to be very big. I can just say S to scale. Can also rotate this plane to this point here. I'm going to say tab for edit mode, 2 for edge selection, or I come to this place and select this edge and say E and Z to extrude upwards. I can select this edge here and say Ctrl B to bevel it. If I scroll my mouse, I will add several loop cuts to that edge. So I'll say tab and I'll right click and say shade smooth. So now it's now looking smoother. I can now also say S to scale again. S and Y to scale on the Y axis. So activate my camera again, so I'm having something looking like this. So I can still also work on the light and the lightings. I think they are looking very sharp. So I can just move them sideways also. Move them this way. move them this way. This should be my backlight. So go to my camera again. So you have to move them forward. What I'll do now, I'll go to my circles where I can see this properly. So I'll come to my render setup. I'll go to render and I'll go to cycles and see how it looks. So I think it's okay. Now come back to my if. So to render is very simple. If you click F12 on your keyboard, that's for render. I'll make this little bit yellow, and I'm going to say camera again. So now go to my render setup again, come to color management, and where we have look, click on that arrow downwards and say high contrast to add some depth to our object here. So now it's now looking kind of more colorful. So now I'll go back to my render engine. I'm going to change this to circles and click F12 on my keyboard to render this. F12. So now we have our burger rendered here also, and it's looking pretty nice. So just try to um, click F12 on your keyboard to render. So thanks for watching. Kindly follow, like, make some comments on my YouTube channel, and keep sharing to your friends and follow for more videos. Thanks.